In my opinion, you're wearing two hats when you're doing the outlining process. What you're basically doing is you're building a boat that is waterproof so that when you set it out on the ocean, it's not going to spring a leak because of a logical problem that you forgot about, because you've created a situation where my character could have solved his problem on page 5 if he'd just done this.
I would love to know, you know, how detailed do your outlines get? Because some people just work off of, you have these proliferation of books like Save the Cat, with its 15 points, Tribby has its 22 points, and so on and so forth. How detailed do you get in your outlines when you guys are working on that?
I get really detailed. In my opinion, lots of people have good ideas, and that's great. I would never say that a good idea is a bad thing. But a lot of people want to go to screenplay immediately because the screenplay is where the fun is. And it's not fun to figure out the story, to figure out your character arcs, to figure out your theme, to figure out your act 1, your act 2, act 3. I mean, it can be fun, but it's really challenging. It uses a different part of the brain. So when I look at TV or movies, when they're showing the writing process, it's usually somebody sits down at the computer and immediately starts typing. And it's like interior room day. Paul Gay is talking. Paul Gay is still talking. Paul Gay will never shut up. And I'm going, my God, that's so great. You can just sit down and you're already writing. You don't have to figure out your characters, your scenes, your sequences. You don't have to figure out your genre, your rating. You don't have to figure out character arc. That would be so great to be a genius who could do that. So I haven't met any of those geniuses, although I'm sure they exist. So what I do is I brainstorm the hell out of these things. And I'm whether I'm writing with a partner or writing solo. So I'm either brainstorming out loud with my partner and then writing stuff down coming from the brainstorm, or if I'm doing it with my computer, I'm just doing it with the computer. And I'm investigating everything. So if you're dealing with for 24 hours, a liar can't tell a lie. Among the things that would come up would be the following. So what are some title possibilities? What are some logline possibilities? Who's my protagonist? Why is he a liar? People lie for a reason. How have lies helped him succeed? And how have they hurt him? Because there's going to be a negative aspect of that. For example, does he have an ex-wife because he cheated and lied about it? Does he have a son who loves him, but he continually breaks the kid's heart and lets him down because he's never there when he needs to be there? He doesn't want to be a bad guy, but in fact, he is a bad guy to his son and to his ex-wife. What does he do for a living? We talked about the various fields that we discussed. None of this is immediately comes to mind. What's the source of the miracle? How much time do we spend with the miracle? How do you get a wish for 24 hours? We don't want to spend a ton of time with the rules. We just want to get the movie going. All of these decisions, what type of court case? And I talked about the fact that we chose something that had an emotional component, largely because Imagine was saying, what you're writing is very funny. We also want to be as moving as we can be. So then we start thinking about, how do we tug at the heartstrings? How do we have something that the audience can go, don't do that, Fletcher? Another thing that we're thinking about is, since our guy starts out as a heel, he's not going to be a baby face until the end of the movie. How do we get people to like this character who's a liar, who's blown up his life with his wife and his kid? And you can't rely on casting because you don't know at that point who you're going to have, and you'd be lucky to get anybody, obviously. So it's one way that we did it is we wrote the wife in Maura Tierney in such a way that she still really likes the guy. And if he hadn't slept around on her, they would still be married. And the son loves him. So we see Fletcher partly through the son's eyes and partly through the wife's eyes. And we're not going, you horrible monster. We're going, damn it. You're so close to being the guy that you could be. Why don't you see the light, turn the corner, and all the other cliches? My then partner and I are walking up and down, walks outside, talking about this stuff, arguing, fighting, whatever. None of this is self-evident to us at the beginning. And all of it has to be argued out and hashed out. And then all the parts have to go together. You've got to make sure that everything fits. And you're also thinking in terms of sequences. What's a funny sequence? What's a funny scene? There's so many things that you're juggling. And again, when you're doing this, in my opinion, you're wearing two hats when you're doing the outlining process. One hat is the child's hat of the person who loves writing and loves playing. And I'm a kid in the sand going, I can make this shape. I can make this shape. I can make this shape. And it's kind of like improv, where instead of saying no, you're going yes and. So you want to encourage as many ideas during the brainstorming process as possible, rather than shutting down your ideas or your partner's ideas, and rather than judging them. Because I think it's a lot easier to write something when you've got stuff on the page that you're changing, as opposed to just having to do it from nothing. So you do the brainstorming, and then you step back and you put on your adult hat, your engineering hat, your Mr. Spock hat, and you go, okay, that's a good idea. It has nothing to do with this film, so move it aside. That's interesting, but it's not going to fit with the other stuff I want to do in this film, so that's not going to work. This works if I change it, and that will connect to this, and that will connect to this, and that will connect to this. What you're basically doing, to use a metaphor, and I promise never to use another metaphor during this conversation, is you're building a boat that is waterproof, so that when you set it out on the ocean, it's not going to spring a leak because of a logical problem that you forgot about, because you've created a situation where, geez, my character could have solved his problem on page 5 if he'd just done this. So most screenplays that I read, people start writing too soon. They get the idea and they go to screenplay. And I'm finding either logical flaws in their protagonist or antagonist, where the protagonist is not doing what he clearly would do in the situation, or the antagonist is not doing what he clearly would in the situation. Or I'm coming up often with a better approach to what it is that they're doing, not because I'm a genius, but because I'm just taking the time to go, well, what if this happened? What if this happened? What if this happened? But I think a lot of people can't live with that uncertainty, or don't like that uncertainty during the outline process. They just want to get to writing. And I would encourage people. I think there are two things that are, I mean, everything about writing is essential, because you've got to get it all right to get somebody to buy your project. But the two things that strike me most powerfully are, people choose an idea that nobody's ever going to make. And I see this all the time. I see premises where, if you're doing your cancer movie and it's not based on a best-selling novel, good luck. God bless you. I hope it gets made. I've seen 3 great cancer movies. I'm so glad I saw them. All of them based on best-selling novels. They never would have gotten made without that. If you're doing your science fiction space Western, good luck. I hope it's great. It's never going to get made, but I hope I'm wrong. You have to have an idea of what people are buying. That doesn't mean that you have to be a whore. It means that you've got to figure out what are your interests and where do they intersect with the interests of audiences and buyers. And I would say only write in the intersection of those two circles. Many, many people kill themselves because their premise is either unproducible or they're unmarketable, or because everybody else is doing it. It's like if somebody said to me, hey, I've got an idea. And I'd say, yes, what's your idea? I'm going to do zombies. And it's like, cool. A couple of years ago, I had a student in one of my classes who came in for the first week with a zombie project. And I read his outline and I said, so here's the situation. I've seen a number of really good zombie movies. So it's not that I'm anti-zombie. It's that everybody else on planet Earth is writing a zombie movie. So if you want to write a zombie movie in my class, you have to differentiate yourself. That means yours has to be different and or better than everybody else's. So I'm going to give you 1 week. And if you come back in 1 week with a variation on the zombie subgenre that I think you can do something with, absolutely. Otherwise, you have to move on. So he was not happy. So he comes back the next week with a variation I'd never seen before. I said, that's great, write it. And it's that simple adjustment, because again, I think most young writers especially are not aware of the incredible volume of competition that there is out there. If people are reading your logline or listening to your elevator pitch and they're not hearing something different or better, why in God's name would they buy your project? Or why in God's name would they recommend you to their boss and put their job on the line?